Thank you for watching Murder, Monsters, and Mysteries. Tonight, we take a look at the terrifying subject, Vampires of Scotland. Years ago, I visited the Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum in Los Angeles, California. While there, I was drawn to one exhibit in particular, their antique vampire defense case. It consisted of a large leather box filled with all the essential tools to fend off vampires, those blood-hungry creatures in the night. And I remember thinking, boy, people in that day and age were so superstitious and terrified of something that didn't even exist. But then why were they so sure? Maybe they did exist. Why is it for such a long period we put cages over graves or tombstones on top of them? Could it be to hold the dead down? When people think of vampires, they typically think of Transylvania. But vampires were known all throughout Europe. Glentilt, Blair Athol, Perth, and Kinross. On the northern side of Perthshire's sleepy town of Blair Athol is bordered by the picturesque Glentilt Circuit. This is a beautiful and well-loved scenic route, a hot spot for tourists, offering wonderful views of the surrounding hillsides, amazing hiking paths, and biker enthusiasts. But it's also known for its vampires. Back in the 20th century, two unwitting poachers became the target of a vampire. The pair said that after bedding down for the night in a woodland cottage, they were attacked by a violent creature which drank the blood from one of them. Choosing either fight or flight, they chose to fight, and together they managed to fend the creature off, and they watched, awestruck, as it flew off into the night. Their story has much in common with other similar tales. In the 1920s, this time in Aberdeen, another two poachers faced the same type of creature. They stopped at the cottage for the night, they bedded down, and in the middle of the night, a creature snuck into the cabin and began drinking blood from one of them. Together, they fought it off again, and another creature disappeared into the night. The Gorbals vampire in Glasgow. In the 1950s, there were stories floating around town of a 7-foot-tall child-eating monster with iron teeth and flaming red eyes, which began to circulate among the locals. Some claim that the beast had strangled two boys to death and then drained their blood. The police at the time claimed to have no knowledge of the missing boys, but the children of the Gorbals decided their only hope was to take matters into their own hands. So for 3 straight nights, a team of over 200 children between the ages of 4 and 14, armed with knives, bats, homemade stakes, or crucifixes, descended on the necropolis, looking for the Gorbals vampire. And ever since, the town's been on the lookout for the creature. Lochmaben Castle vampire. Professional ghost hunter Tom Robertson spent his entire life getting close and personal with ghosts and creatures of the afterlife. But nothing he ever encountered quite compared to what he saw in the ruins of Lochmaben Castle. Lochmaben Castle itself is filled with gory history. Maybe we'll do a video on the castle a different day. But it's known for its wicked hauntings of ghosts and vampires, as it turns out. Robertson to this day insists he came face to face with one back in 1991. Upon hearing about a creature in the area that would drain the blood of its victims, Robertson decided to investigate the site for himself. Soon after he entered the lush green forest near the castle, he met the culprit. Just 15 feet from him was a walking, decomposing corpse, he said, with gray, almost translucent skin, black eyes, and it was dressed in a black hood. According to Robertson, the creature suddenly took flight and glided between the trees, like Tarzan on steroids, he said. 8 years later, Robertson returned to Lochmaben. This time he was more prepared to hunt the creature. This time, he believes he was able to capture the vampire on camera. In a statement later on, he said, "I never went back to Lochmaben, nor should you. There was a creature slinking around in those woods. baying for blood. The evil monk of Melrose Abbey, Melrose, Roxburghshire. Founded in 1131, Melrose Abbey was one of several Cistercian monasteries to be built along the Scottish borders. It's also the final resting place for many famous kings and nobles. In the 12th century, Melrose Abbey was home to a priest who was disliked among his religious brothers. He was known to regularly break the rules, and the other monks nicknamed him Hunderprest, due to the fact he would always go hunting with dogs rather than dedicate his time to God. He died in the spring of 1196 and was buried in the adjoining cemetery. Every night following his demise, Hunderprest would rise from his tomb and wander the grounds. He would awaken the other priests with his constant wailing, but even more terrifying, he was known to drink the blood of the nuns. Some of the priests prayed regularly during this time, hoping that would fend off the creature, their former brother. But when that didn't work, a group of priests gathered around the creature's grave one night. This time, when the creature climbed from his grave, the monks were ready and waiting with a huge axe, which they used to behead the undead beast. The following morning, when they returned to the tomb, blood was still flowing from Hunderprest's wound. They then took the creature, cremated it, and that seemed to solve the problem. Vampire attack in Edinburgh. On the 23rd of November, around the year 1900, a man named Jeffrey Anderson was walking home late in the evening when he saw something very strange. Between Princess Street and Hanover Street, a horse and cart were stood outside a shop. The only light in the street came from within the shop, but Jeffrey was able to see a large creature crawling from a drain across the street. He couldn't see its legs, but it began to change shape before his eyes. Then, it charged towards the horse at a rapid speed, faster than a human. The creature lunged for the horse's neck and began to feed. This spurred Jeffrey and another bystander to step in and help the animal. The bloodthirsty creature disappeared instantly, and the horse, though terrified, survived the encounter. And now a brief ad break.
From the evil one, deliver me.
From the evil one, deliver me.
At the hour of my death,
At the hour of my death,
call me and bid me to come to thee.
call me and bid me to come to thee.
Give me the compass. If you don't, we'll take her eyes. We'll take your family's eyes. We'll make this whole town blind.
From the evil one, deliver me.
At the hour of my death,
At the hour of my death,
Probably should have come here first.
come to thee.
call me and bid me.
Inverleith, Edinburgh. In 1915, there was a murder of a medical student, Andrew Murr, which remains unsolved to this day. The circumstances surrounding his death leave many believing it was not a human, but something else that took his life. Around the time of his death, Andrew was said to have been investigating paranormal activity within the William Breen House Hotel. During this time, several staff and visitors had reported to see an evil apparition inside the building that watched their every move. Most of them left the hotel and they never came back. Acting on a dare from his friends, Andrew asked the owners if it would be possible for him to hold a midnight seance in the room with the most activity. They agreed and left him with a bell that he could ring if he needed help. Sure enough, a few hours into the seance, the bell chimed loudly, followed by one blood-curdling scream. The owners came rushing into the room. They found Andrew's lifeless body with 2 bleeding puncture wounds in his neck. Many believe it to be the late William Breen, the previous owner of the house. It was said after his passing, Breen was buried 40 feet down in a secured coffin, as per his own strict instructions. And no one knew why at the time that he had made these strange demands. Could it be that he knew he was to become a vampire? Glamis Angus. Constructed in the 14th century, Glamis Castle is one of the oldest inhabited castles in Scotland. Even the land it was built on has a rich prehistoric history. It's another castle known for ghosts, but vampires as well. The first vampire account at the castle was recorded about 100 years after one of the female servants was discovered drinking the blood from an unknown victim. As punishment for her crime, the woman was allegedly walled up inside a hidden chamber in the castle while she was still alive. Some believe she is still in there waiting to be released. Another story talks about the birth of a monstrous child in the early 1800s who was so deformed that he wasn't expected to live. As a result, he was kept locked away in a room for much of his life. To everyone's shock, the boy lived a very long life until he eventually passed away sometime between 1921 and 1941. Many believe that the boy was secretly kept hidden away because he was a vampire, and that each generation of his family is cursed to have one in their bloodline. Scottish Highlands. In traditional Scottish folklore, Babanshee, or white women, are said to roam the Highlands. These women vampires are described as wearing long green dresses to conceal their deer hooves, which people believe they have instead of human feet. Some of them have the ability to turn into hooded crows or ravens, which is a departure from the normal bat transformations. Like succubus and sirens, Bavanshees will use their beauty to lure in their victims. Once the victim's guard is down, they will drain their blood, just like a regular vampire. They're also sensitive to sunlight. They spend their days waiting for the night so they can claim another victim. Many hunters have claimed to be approached by the women vampires. One account was written by folklorist Donald Alexander Mackenzie. He described 4 men were violently attacked after taking refuge in a remote hut for the night. They were playing music and dancing around the hut when the men had expressed a desire for female companionship. And just like that, 4 beautiful women showed up at the door. For a time, the women danced with the men as one of them sat next to the musician. But soon things started to go strange. The musician looked over and he noticed spots of blood dropping from his friends to the floor. Wasting no time, he bolted from the hut and hid among the horses. When the sun came up, the woman disappeared. But his friends weren't so lucky. He found them all dead and drained of their blood. Over potentially thousands of years and thousands of accounts, can we just dismiss it as folklore and superstition? Or are these vampires real, stalking us? Are they the top of the food chain? Thank you for watching Murder, Monsters, and Mysteries. If you enjoyed tonight's video, please like and subscribe, as we'll be uploading more regularly.